Hi, YouTubers, and welcome back to It's Not That Difficult, and for another episode on the garage rebuild. Last time we were installing the metal to the concrete stem walls all around. In this episode, we will see the first wall going up. I mentioned last time that I installed the metal first, and then had a second base plate on the wall because it wasn't clear to me based on the plans. So let's take a quick look. Here again the whole framing plan, and we will start with the wall on top of the plan. I figured that would be the easiest to start with as it has neither doors nor windows or the crossbeam considerations. Getting into things easy. There are some things to keep in mind though. First, we have a shear wall on the left here. It starts on the corner post and extends to the second post where the other hold down is. Second, there is a center post that goes all the way to the ridge beam eventually. In my case, I checked with the architect, and this post is actually interrupted by the top plate, and with the proper hardware is not a problem. In reality though, I didn't see this initially, and so I had to check on this later. Oops. Third, the post on the right side of the drawing will be part of the wall section on the right, and not this initial section. The second top plate will connect them up. So here we see now where my confusion came in. If you look at the framing diagram, it shows the bottom plate being nailed to the floor or wall. Since I have concrete walls, that didn't make any sense to me. So I assumed that the bottom the base plate nails into is another plate. In the end, my contractor friend explained to me that this drawing just assumes a normal subfloor setup, in which case the nailing would be the right thing to do. Oh well. The inspector didn't say much other than, "Oh, you used two base plates, I guess that makes sense." So somehow he understood how this can be confusing. This drawing also tells us how the overlap needs to work when the top plates overlap. In this case, at least 48 inches of overlap. This diagram goes into a bit more detail and also tells us what to do if we need to splice plates. I had to do that since the wall was about 19 feet, and so it wasn't doable with a single piece of lumber. Most important information here is that the splice needs to end on a stud for either side and the studs get nailed together. Finally, we have to take into account that at the shear wall, each panel of plywood needs to end on its own stud that then also gets nailed together with the other panel stud. And then, as one would expect, the corners need to accommodate something to eventually screw the drywalls against. So depending on the situation, the right solution needs to be chosen. And now we're off to the build. First thing I did was lay out the lumber based on all the information we just went over. The studs are 16 inches on center, plus taking into account all locations where we need to splice plates on the top and the bottom. In this case, I made sure the top and bottom plates splice at different locations so it becomes one solid wall. Here I'm remeasuring the stud distances and making sure that I have 16 on center as well as the shear wall double stud taken into account. Because we have to place the new base plate on top of the mudsole, which has the bearing plates already installed, we now have to notch out the space for these bearing plates. To keep the general structural integrity, we keep the notches to a bare minimum. so remeasuring and fixing where we are slightly off. Also in this case, I made the mistake the first time around and had to cut the second version, as you can see here. In order to build the entire wall in one piece, I had to level out the setup. In retrospect, I should have just cut the wall into two sections and then made the second top plate tie them together. But this did work. this point the camera died. So the bottom plate, top plate, studs and posts are all nailed together now. And so here I'm cutting an extra stud that gets connected to the post and has also a notch on the bottom where the hold down goes to ensure it is the right distance from the hold down anchor. I used a 2x4 in this case because the hold down anchor was offset to the outside anyway, and I could use another 2x4 perpendicular to this one to provide a surface for the drywalls to screw into. Next are the blocks between the studs. However, the camera battery died again, so I don't have the footage. But it looked something like this. Finally, I asked my good friend Peter over to help me push up the wall. I did forget to start the camera though, so no video of that either. Here you see the wall up. I used two 55-gallon drums filled with water to provide a counterweight for bracing this wall. They are on the outside, so I still have room to work on the inside of the garage for the next walls. Before really moving on to the next walls, I wanted to make sure the hold downs do connect properly, so I worked on that next. As you can see, the hold down anchor was too short due to the double base plate now. So I used a coupler nut and an extra anchor rod to extend the original anchor to the correct height. Since there is not a lot of space between the corner post and the next stud, I needed to use a 90-degree angle adapter for my drill. However, with that I wasn't able to get enough torque on the screws to get them screwed all the way in, so I had to resort to a manual ratchet to drive them in fully. And this gets us to the end of this episode. First wall is up, which did turn out to be one of the easiest ones. Next time we'll work on the next wall with the first door opening, as well as taking the crossbeam into account. If you like the series so far, or have questions or comments about anything I'm doing, please leave a comment below. Until then, please visit our Instagram page for more frequent updates. Please also like and subscribe. So don't forget to hit the bell to get notified as soon as a new clip gets posted. See y'all soon!